The Prophecy of the Unknown Future. Councillor Alistair Vance, with his perfectly styled silver hair and eyes shining with intellectual passion, handled the fragile parchment as though it were Aeonfex's most prized gem. It carried a faint, earthy aroma from the Aevum Archives, reflecting its long period of rest. Next to him, Archivist Penelope Veridian adjusted her glasses, her sharp, analytical eyes carefully reviewing the digitized version on her data slate. The yellowed parchment bore the mark of the Order of Aevum Providence, its faded ink detailing what the long-dead seer had called the unseen future, a temporal horizon where even Aeonfex's finest chronometric instruments failed. Alistair's fingers trembled slightly as he traced the ancient symbols that had accurately foretold the Great Paradox Wars. These weren't lucky guesses. Each prediction had been meticulously cross-referenced with the Society's sealed historical archives. This wasn't prophecy. It was something far more profound, a mathematical blueprint of time itself, waiting for someone with his theoretical framework to decode.
Extraordinary,
Alistair whispered, his gloved fingertip hovering over the ancient symbol as if afraid to disturb its power. His pupils dilated with academic hunger.
Do you see it, Penelope? Each curve and intersection, they're perfect reflections of my theoretical models.
His breath quickened as decades of rejected papers and academic ridicule dissolved before this yellowed validation. The chronometric equations that had consumed his nights now pulsed before him in ancient ink, promising what the Society had sought for centuries, the ability to pierce the veil of tomorrow. A frown creased Penelope's brow as she studied the data slate. Something felt wrong. The prophecy's historical accuracy was impeccable, yet her instruments detected anomalies in the parchment's chronal signature, whispers of temporal interference. The readings reminded her of a palimpsest, where ancient scribes had written over partially erased text, leaving ghostly impressions beneath. Here, too, layers of time energy overlapped imperfectly, their patterns refusing to harmonize.
Councillor,
She began, clearing her throat softly.
something's off with this parchment. The historical predictions align perfectly, yes, but my instruments detect temporal irregularities in its very fabric, like ripples in what should be a smooth surface, almost as if
Choosing her words carefully.
someone engineered this prophecy rather than simply recording it.
Alistair's hand cut through the air between them.
Temporal noise, nothing more. Any artifact this old accumulates such distortions.
His eyes never left the parchment, fingers hovering possessively over its surface.
My equations already compensate for these anomalies.
A slight flush colored his neck as he leaned closer to the prophecy that would vindicate decades of academic exile.
The predictive accuracy speaks for itself, Archivist.
Yet Penelope was not one to be brushed aside. She investigated further, comparing the chronal signature with documented cases of intentional time manipulation. Her findings were unsettling. The slight discrepancies resembled the faint traces left by meticulously crafted temporal traps, paradoxes purposefully planted to achieve certain causal effects.
Councillor,
She pressed, her voice tinged with urgency.
I've discovered correlations. This chronal signature, it closely resembles the temporal bait employed in early, albeit risky, experiments with timeline manipulation. What if this prophecy isn't actually a glimpse into the future, but instead a meticulously designed device to steer us towards a specific outcome? An outcome we might not even understand.
Within the archive's hushed chambers, their intellectual differences escalated into conflict. Alistair clutched the parchment tighter with each objection, his knuckles whitening as Penelope presented her evidence.
These readings cannot be dismissed,
She insisted, projecting temporal wave patterns onto the wall. He barely glanced at them, instead tracing the prophecy's symbols with reverent fingertips.
You see corruption where there is revelation,
He whispered, the fervor in his eyes matching the feverish flush creeping up his neck. Alistair hunched over his workstation night after night, the prophecy's text projected above his calculations. His fingers danced across holographic equations, adjusting variables to accommodate each cryptic phrase from the parchment.
This is it!
He whispered to the empty laboratory, eyes bloodshot but triumphant, as temporal coordinates materialized for regions of time previously considered impenetrable.
The unseen future, finally within our grasp.
Meanwhile, Penelope labored intensely, dissecting the prophecy's wording to uncover any internal contradictions or hints of tampering. She found that the predictions, seemingly precise, were actually written in vague terms, which allowed them to be interpreted in various ways to fit events only after they had happened. She understood that the prophecy was expertly crafted with ambiguous language, giving it an illusion of foresight. Penelope's hands trembled as she held the brittle fragment of parchment beneath the archive's spectral light. This log, older than the prophecy itself, bore the unmistakable seal of the Royal Horologic Society's founding council. Between thick black redaction lines, phrases leapt out: temporal seeding protocol, prophetic implantation, causality engineering. Her breath caught as the pieces aligned. The Society hadn't discovered prophecies. They had manufactured them, planting calculated predictions in history's soil to grow into the future they desired. Temporal gardening, one unredacted margin note called it, cultivating tomorrow through yesterday's whispers. The prophecy of the unseen future, Penelope suddenly understood, wasn't a rediscovery. It was a re-emergence. It was a seed that had been planted ages ago, now coming to life at a crucial moment. But whose envisioned future was it directing them toward? And what might be the implications of pursuing a path shaped by temporal manipulation? The night before the Grand Council Assembly, Alistair and Penelope faced each other across the laboratory's central holotable, their silhouettes cast in the blue glow of temporal projections. He clutched his finalized equations like sacred texts while she gripped the damning evidence of manipulation in white-knuckled hands, neither willing to yield as the clock ticked toward morning's fateful presentation.
Counselor,
She said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands as she extended the redacted log toward him.
this isn't a map we've discovered. It's a path that was laid for us to follow. We aren't seers glimpsing tomorrow. We're pawns being positioned for someone else's endgame.
Alistair's eyes gleamed with zealot's fire as he waved away her evidence.
While you chase phantoms in the dark, Penelope, I stand at the threshold of temporal enlightenment.
Alistair strode to the podium, equations hovering in the air as he gestured through his presentation. With each swipe of his hand revealing another timeline extrapolated from the ancient text, the chamber's chronal indicators pulsed erratically. First amber, then crimson. A subsonic vibration rattled the teeth of everyone present. From her seat in the back row, Penelope watched in horror as her worst fears materialized. The prophecy wasn't illuminating the future, but actively warping it, creating a temporal feedback loop that threatened to collapse their reality into a single, predetermined point. As Alistair proclaimed his victory, the chamber's lights flickered and went out. A wave of temporal distortion swept through the room. It turned out that the unseen future was not a magnificent discovery, but rather an unexpected and perilous outcome of meddling with the fragile strands of causality, all originating from a prophecy that should have remained hidden. The trap had been triggered.